Hey guys, this is LC Holt. This is my weekly update for the week of July 23rd. And I have a very special guest here with me today. And we're just going to jump right into it because everybody knows Simon Barrett. Simon Barrett wrote You're Next. He directed me in VHS 2. He wrote Blair Witch. He wrote The Guest. He wrote a bunch of other stuff, and we'll, I'm sure, talk about that. But hey, Simon, how you doing today, man?
Great, buddy. It's good to see you. It's been a few years, unfortunately, but yeah, it's good to see you and hear your voice. And I love that you've got that fox mask there on the wall behind you. I've
Yeah.
got the I've got the original tiger mask in a closet here, and every time Adam comes over, he gets like really mad at me and tells me I need to have it like professionally framed because it's like the only original tiger mask that survived the production because they all got destroyed.
And
And I've,
I think all of my masks were destroyed too because I don't have an original. This is one that was sent to me by Snoot. Uh,
Yeah, when they redid them for like all the screenings and stuff. Yep. So no, yeah. I mean, they all got destroyed. I think all of Lane's like original Fox masks got destroyed. All your Lamb masks, of course, got. I mean, they never worked to begin with.
right.
So no one was going to duplicate the Lamb mask from your next because no one could see out of it.
That was one of
And
those things you don't find out until you started shooting too. I put it on for the first time for the first shot, and I realized, damn, I'm blind in one eye.
well, we talked about it. Well, first of all, yeah. I mean, we were guessing the width of like your pupils, basically, because Adam really wanted it to have those iris like vertical slits. I
Mhm.
don't even know. I don't even know how we managed to purchase or find a mask that didn't have eye holes. Because the fox mask, of course, has eye holes. The tiger mask has eye holes. For some reason, we managed to get a lamb mask that didn't have eye holes already. It was like make your own. And Adam was like decided that he wanted those vertical slits. And I remember we both kind of put it on at one point, and I was like, "Well, I can't see anything." And Adam was just like, "Elsie will figure it out." And
It's
when you're producing a movie like You're Next, and someone says like, "Don't worry about this, someone else will handle it." That's all you need to hear. And then then we gave it to you, and we're like, "Can you see?" And you're like, muffled, like, not really, guys." And we're like, "Well, all right, let's roll one. We just need you to jump through a window with an axe and turn over this table." And yeah. But yeah, no, I think I have the only actual original mask to survive the production. I think maybe our special effects team ended up with one, but I mean, they all just got destroyed. I mean, we only had like three each.
yeah. I
I
remember.
had people reaching out, trying like being like fans and stuff, being like, "Hey, how do I get like an original mask?" And I was like, even the actors don't have the original mask. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
But I didn't say that because I love our fans, as you know.
Oh, absolutely. As do I. And but they do
Yeah.
ask that a lot because at doing conventions, we would sell the Lionsgate masks, which were not, and some people thought those were like original things, and they're not. I mean, they're like kind of a glossy coat on it. It doesn't look like the actual ones from the movie look like that, and sort of a dull finish. The Lionsgate ones had kind of like a gloss on them, you know.
Yeah, the ones from the movie, yeah, they couldn't be reflective, of course, because we had lights on you guys. So it was. I mean, I think they were. It's like you ever see like one of those cars that someone like spray paints themselves and it has that like matte finish.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah, I mean, I think they were just spray painted, but I think Mike Strain, our effects guy on that, did a pass, and then Tom Hammock did like our production designer, who's currently working with Adam on Godzilla vs Kong. He I think did like a second pass to kind of just give it some coloration. So the actual masks in the movie, despite the fact that they were like literally 99-cent masks that we just got from like a factory somewhere, ended up looking pretty subtle, and yeah, you can't duplicate that. Hot Topic. That's my like favorite thing. That made me feel like Joan and Vasquez or something when like Hot Topic started selling your next masks.
Yeah.
And then of course I was instantly furious that we hadn't like copyrighted our but yeah, whatever.
That was another thing, yeah, that we get. I remember doing this one thing in New Jersey, and there were guys coming up, and he was running a booth. He was a dealer there, and he wanted to buy all of the supply of the lamb mask. And I thought at first, oh, that's cool. He's got a big Your Next fan here. But then I realized he wanted to buy it to sell it as WWE masks.
Oh yeah, for the what's the family?
Yeah, I don't know, but I was like, fuck no, you can't.
Yeah. Well, I mean that is the funny thing. I mean, well, for a long time, people Actually, I mean, I'm kind of kidding when I say that I got like frustrated by other people using the masks and that look, because the truth is, for the longest time on like Twitter and stuff, people would, you know, be asking me, how do I get a mask? And I would just send them like the link to like, you know, just the kids' masks and just be like, make them yourself. Like this plus gray spray paint. I was like, let's do like a Fugazi t-shirt like approach to this. Like, I'm not gonna sell this to you. I don't want to sell this to you. Just go figure it out. Like, but you know, people want people want it to be like official, you know, they want to like, and actually, I mean, in a lot of cases, people do want to be supportive, which is a weird aspect of you know, kind of having fans of our work that I'm still kind of getting used to. Is people are like, hey, you know, can I like get this from you, or where do I buy this? And I'm just like, I'll just steal it. And then they're like kind of disappointed. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I was just like trying to be nice. I'm sorry. Like you're trying to be supportive. I forgot that like that happens.
And a lot of people aren't like really supportive of this thing, but two, you know, you don't necessarily understand all the ins and outs of like rights and things and who owns what. Like some people think that they're like, well, when are you going to make your next two? And I'm like, I'm not going to make your next two. I have no control over that. I mean, you know,
Well,
yeah, but I mean, it's a genuine question because they're like, oh, great, I want to see more, you know. So not everyone understands the, you know, the ins and outs of how, you know, all that stuff works.
At this point, the rights have reverted back to our producers at Snoot, Keith and Jess Calder. So I think at this point, if we wanted to, and if we wanted to lose a lot of money, we could make our own sequel. I think Lionsgate no longer. I think Lionsgate would have like first look at the sequel or whatever. But I mean, it's just like, I mean, you know, our movie didn't make a ton of money. People have discovered it and people like it, but you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I'd rather just do something new. The sequel question is such a weird one, because it is, you know, it's your number one question if you're a fan of a film. It's like, you know, can you give me more of this? But I kind of believe personally that if we did give them a Your Next Two ever, and you know, we had a concept for it, which I'm perfectly willing to talk about. I'm perfectly willing to.
I remember that concept. Yeah, I remember you. I don't know if you were Wingard. One of you told me the whole concept of two, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, one of the main things is that one of my main pitches is that your character who gets like stabbed in the forehead is still alive, but can no longer feel any pain or discomfort. Mm-hmm. So like, there's like one of the opening introductions would be like you smoking a cigarette, and it would just like burn out on your fingers, and you're just like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Because and like, you know, because like your frontal lobe has been so damaged. And it was like this whole revenge thing with other characters, with like, you know, Erin would be in her prison van on her way to prison for all the murders because she was the sole survivor. And then like you from a hospital bed are like orchestrating this attack on the prison van. But anyway, the whole thing would be her chained up with a bunch of other women, kind of like a female prisoner scorpion, like 731 type scenario. And they have to, you know, after the prison van's attack, they have to take refuge in a meth lab out in the woods, which is already booby trapped. And then they end up fighting like both meth dealers in and inside the house, and then also like, you know, the home invasion with the masked killers. And it was a pretty, I mean, that doesn't sound very coherent the way I just explained it, but it was a pretty coherent like escalation of what the first film did. And like having like a meth lab with all these like insane booby traps like already prepared, mm-hmm. I thought would have been really kind of funny. But
yeah, that's exactly the pitch that Wingard told me, and I'm so glad that you brought it up and told it, because for years I've been afraid to even whisper about that.
I mean, you know, well, there was a little bit where we talked about, where we kind of weren't talking about it because we were like, you know what, let's do this as like a graphic novel. Mm-hmm. That way. Like, because my fear with doing sequels, and the only sequel to this day, I've done a sequel to someone else's film, is VHS, which was partially a joke because it was just because the first film hadn't even come out yet, but we were like unhappy with like the results we got, and we just wanted to do another one, and they cost so little money that we were just like, oh, let's just do it. Like it was literally a sequel that people didn't even have the opportunity to want.
Right. That was VHS 2.
Yeah, VHS 2, which came out which I think got its commercial release less than a year prior to the first film. I mean, they both showed at Sundance. VHS 1 premiered at Sundance 2012, and VHS 2 premiered at Sundance 2013. but they were like less than a year apart in terms of Magnolia putting them out, and we thought that was kind of like just like funny, that we were like, yeah, we've got some time, let's do another one. But in terms of like actual sequels that fans demand, and really I'm just limiting myself to You're Next and The Guest here. No one is really asking for A Horrible Way to Die Part 2 or anything else, Autoerotic 2 or whatever. I kind of, my fear is first of all, I know what the market is for this. It's non-existent. But beyond that, it's like, my fear is that we have a cool thing, this standalone movie, and it's like all you can do is ruin it. I don't want to like keep exploiting that, and when I would rather be telling new original stories. But then on the other hand, it was kind of like if we do it as a graphic novel, then it's kind of like the fans who want it can buy it, the fans who don't want it can ignore it. Yeah. It doesn't spoil anything, it doesn't ruin the legacy of the original film, but here's this story, if you were curious, that we bothered to like flesh out.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating because I didn't know the graphic novel option.
It was just something we talked to a few artists about, and ironically, now I am writing a graphic novel with an artist who I really love, and that hasn't been announced yet anywhere, so I'm not really, I can't chat about that particular project. But that's an original thing. It is a script that I wrote that like people didn't want to make because I think it wasn't very commercial. So now I'm doing that as a comic. But with both Your Next 2 and The Guest 2, we flirted with the idea of doing a comic book sequel to both films, and we'd publish it as like a standalone graphic novel. And again, if you want it, here you go. If you want more of the story, here you go. And if you don't, just don't buy this.
Right.
And every time it just kind of was like, it was tough. We never could get it quite right, because it's such a different medium. And like the last thing I want to do is do like a shitty graphic novel that again like kind of spoils the legacy of the original, or feels like we're trying to like overly capitalize on something, because I'm just very sensitive to that. Like, as a horror fan, you and I kind of started this conversation right off talking about merchandising and what's the responsible relationship with your fans. If people, like at what point does like giving your fans what they want become exploiting your fans? And I really don't have an answer to that. I think it's different for every fan and every filmmaker, and the responsibility of those interactions, as a fan of other filmmakers and as a filmmaker myself, I don't know, like there's people I meet and I'm like, I want their autograph, but I don't ask for it anymore because I think it'd be weird. But I don't know. Anyway, it's complicated, but like I don't know. The graphic novel thing honestly just never clicked. We never found the right artist. We were never truthfully passionate about it enough to really put the effort in that it would have taken to see that to the finish. So that's why we didn't talk about it for a while, because like I think for years there was this sense of like, we'll do something with this story. Mm-hmm. And then now I feel like my sense is, no, we'll never do anything with that story. So we can talk about it all we want.
Yeah. And it's one of those things as well. I think the concept of a sequel to a movie that you really like can be real fun to contemplate. But when you actually see anything, it's that syndrome of, well, you kind of have it's been some time has passed. You have the original firmly in your mind. And so can anything really live up to that?
Yeah, especially so many years later. I mean, I know with Blair Witch, a lot of people were very disappointed by our take on that. I think people, either had high expectations or they just didn't want a sequel. So that kind of confirmed a lot of my feelings about sequels. I mean, I think about this stuff more than most people, because once you have a success like You're Next, all you get offered in Hollywood, I'd say every year, once a week or so, I'll get offered like a remake or sequel. And it's slowed down some because people have figured out that I turn them down all the time. And also like I haven't made a film in a couple of years, so we've got stuff going. It's going to be good. But like, like right after You're Next, I mean, Adam and I got offered so many of the remakes and sequels that have come out, and we turned them all down. We turned everything down until Blair Witch, because not only were we friends with those filmmakers, but that really felt like a cool creative challenge. And I Saw the Devil. Like I did write the remake of I Saw the Devil, which is slowly being developed. We'll see what happens with that. But like, but that was again another thing where I think Kim Ji-woon was excited to have because I had a different take on the original, because didn't want to do the original film beat by beat. I wanted to take the premise and go in a different direction with it.
Right.
So, that's kind of, I don't know. So sequels and remakes are always on my mind. It's always like, do people even want this? Because creatively, I tend to find them not that satisfying or exciting. And a lot of my favorite filmmakers, and I'm sure you feel the same way, are people who haven't really done a lot of sequels and remakes. They do a lot of original films.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Kubrick, they're very much opposed to it. I mean, they're very much opposed to the idea of sequels in general, not just to their own work. I mean, even if you think of someone like John Carpenter did, 2 sequels in his life? Maybe? One I know of. He did Escape from L.A. Did he?
He did Escape from L.A. He co-wrote Halloween 2.
That's right.
And I think, he kind of was involved in Halloween 2, but then sure enough, what did he want to do with Halloween 3? Something completely different. He was like, oh, you want to keep making Halloween movies? Well, what if we make it about like Stonehenge and like a murderous child's mask company? And which is wonderful. I mean, that's why John Carpenter, but that's why like you can look at John Carpenter and say, this is this filmmaker. Like you can see a movie and say that is a John Carpenter movie. It's because he didn't just like dedicate himself to remakes and sequels. He obviously did The Thing, but The Thing is radically different. The script, wonderful script. And he didn't write it, but Bill Lancaster wrote it.
Right.
Amazing screenwriter who also wrote Bad News Bears and then basically was like done, which is like talk about like a winning streak. Right. But yeah, I mean, but he made those things completely his own. And I'd argue that a lot of, kind of the modern filmmakers that people look at as like auteurs now, whether it's Chris Nolan or P.T. Anderson or David Fincher, or even, someone like kind of new, Jordan Peele is obviously someone who we're all super excited to see what he does next, after Get Out. Like, these are people that are not, I mean, Jordan Peele, if he wanted to, could be doing, the remake of any horror movie right now, but he wants to tell his own stories. And I think that's what allows you as a viewer to actually know what a filmmaker's personality is and to say like, oh, okay, if I see a David Fincher movie, he's going to deliver like this level of quality. And that makes me want to see all his films. So there's a lot of tricky things. I mean, the main reason I just don't do a lot of sequels and remakes is just because, again, I don't find it creatively exciting. And since I'm not as broke as I used to be when we were doing Your Next, like, I can afford to turn things down, at the time in my life when I would have absolutely sold out and agreed to do anything because I just had so much debt and needed a paycheck. Maybe I was lucky that no one was offering me anything. So you take a film like Your Next, which, from our perspective was such a meteoric success. I mean, we made this in my hometown, well under $1 million, as you well know, and we sold it for more than it cost. Like, amazing. Like really a huge success for the producers, for our financiers, for everyone involved. But like,
and made a lot for its budget, like, well,
but by the standards of like your average Blumhouse release, we were like a flop, or a weird movie that
I didn't know what the marketing costs were either. I'm sure that's pretty substantial.
Yeah, I mean, they were like high. I mean, by my understanding, I probably shouldn't say, but it's like 25 times what the movie cost or so. Right. To release a movie on that many screens, on say 2,000 plus screens, which is, I guess, the current benchmark of what a wide release is. Although obviously a lot of films open much bigger than that. I think the minimum you can really spend to market it, unless you're being really crafty and clever. And some companies like A24 are very good at kind of finding outside of the box ways to market stuff, as opposed to just like trailer and billboard saturation. But I mean, you're looking at about between 20 and 35 million just to release a movie, just to get it in that many theaters. Then plus you have your split with the exhibitors, your profit split with the theaters for actual ticket prices, and like a million other factors. Excuse me. So like for for your Next was a huge success for everyone except kind of the people who put it out in theaters. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's a very strange movie that pauses for Joe Swanberg and Ty West and Amy Simons to have an argument about like commercial versus art cinema. Right. It really played quite well at festivals.
Yeah.
But, like like no one else, I think, particularly gave a shit about the joke we were making there. And it's a success, but I think sometimes people, especially actually The Guest, which actually really didn't make money in theaters. I think sometimes when people ask for the sequel or stuff, they kind of don't realize, like, that if these films were hits, like, they wouldn't be able to stop studios from making a sequel.
Right.
If Your Next had made money, I think Lionsgate would have made a sequel regardless of Adam and I having any opinion on that whatsoever. If we'd made like 50 million, like they would have been like, "What's your sequel idea? Okay, we've got a better one.
Right.
Like, see you later." And we would have been like, "All right, like, mail the checks to this address," and that's a fine attitude too. But yeah, anyway, it's a funny conversation.
It's one of those things where even people will say, "Oh, I get a little bit." People will ask, "How did Superman Returns make $500 million and be considered a flop?" Well, the reason is because of what we just talked about on a much larger scale, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't apply to films like Your Next, which are so low budget. I mean, at the time that Your Next came out, I believe we were the lowest budget wide release film of all time, because films like Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch cost less than Your Next, but they were rollouts. They started limited. They weren't just put in over 2,000 theaters. And even films like Halloween back in the day weren't just put. It'd been a really long time since a movie that was that indie was just put in over 2,000 theaters. Now, subsequently, films like The Gallows and Unfriended, Blumhouse raised the bar for releasing low budget movies in a ton of theaters and just marketing the heck out of them and making it work. But at the time, that really wasn't a viable business model. I mean, and it wasn't for us really. Although our film sat on the shelf for 2 years, so it's complicated. But
yes, that is a story that I've tried to explain, and that is way too complicated too.
It is. Oh, but what I was going to say is, so with a film like Your Next, this rule of thumb doesn't work. But generally with a studio movie, the thing that I've always heard is, if its budget, like just production costs, multiply that by 2.5, and that's like the least it must make. Because of, again, we talked about marketing costs, the costs of distribution, which is less now that everything's DCP. But you still have an exhibitor split with theaters, which often can be 50-50. Everyone says like theaters make their money from concessions and so on. And I think that's largely true, but they do get a share of each ticket. And, so if it's Avengers 3 or whatever, maybe for the first 2 weeks, the theater only takes 20% and the studio gets 80% or something. But then week 3, the theater starts getting 40% and the studio gets 60%. Week 4, it's 50-50. They have contracts for each film. That's why there are exhibitor screenings and stuff where studios show their films to exhibitors and are basically like, "You're going to want this. This is going to pack your theater. Everyone's going to buy junior mints. We're going to ask you to take less than 30%. That's a whole complicated business that I almost never see talked about in any box office analysis. So when people say like Solo, which they shot twice, which I actually quite enjoyed. Adam and I both really liked Solo, by the way. I thought it was like the best new Star Wars movie yet. That's not a popular opinion, I don't think, but they made it twice. They spent they ultimately are admitting that they spent $300 million making this movie. So just by that basic math, with the costs of marketing it and all this other stuff, that movie has to make $750 million. Mm-hmm. And it didn't. And so that's a loss, which is mind-boggling. Can you imagine your movie making like $700 million? Like $700 million in the studio is like, oh, like no bonus for you.
Disaster. What a horrible waste of money.
Well, I mean, and we live in weird times where like kind of what's happened to economically to our country, like can kind of be seen in the film industry, which is like huge movies like that cost 200 million plus and can be marketed and have marketing expenditures of 200 million plus, can saturate the market and do well. And little tiny indie movies that cost like nothing can make a profit through VOD and small releases and what's left of kind of the VOD streaming market. now that DVD and physical media are kind of largely no longer a viable source of revenue.
Right.
But the kind of middle ground, say, inhabited by movies like The Guest, which cost about 4 to 5 million, 4.5, I think, was ultimately, and then we got some tax cuts after that. But it's hard to make money off films like that. And every year a film comes out and does it. This year, Hereditary, I thought was great. A Quiet Place was kind of in that sweet spot, though. A Quiet Place was almost 20 million. And made by like Michael Bay for a major studio and stuff, but like still, it was like a mid-range genre movie that did enormously well. Mm-hmm. So every year a few films kind of pop, but for the most part, if it doesn't have like a great gimmick that really seizes people's imagination, there's increasingly kind of no middle class of cinema, and I don't have a solution to that. I kind of like making movies in that area. I just feel like I maybe need to make better ones or more commercial ones or whatever. But Adam conversely is making a $200 million movie or something right now. He's making Godzilla vs. Kong. So like, we both kind of have like different approaches, and we have other projects that we're working on together. Like, we're going to keep making movies together, but like, we're both kind of like, all right, like I'm going to try a different method of this and see how it works. Yeah.
Now, this is something that popped into my mind just now, and this kind of goes back a little ways. But I remember when Wingard and I were doing the first feature that we did, which was Homesick. Mm-hmm. And at one point, they went down to another town in Alabama, south of where we were filming, and they visited the set of a movie that you wrote called Dead Birds.
Yeah, that's true.
And they came back and they were telling me about the set and the actors and the experience. Is that where you first met Wingard?
Yeah, that's where I met Adam and Evan Katz, our buddy E.L. Katz, that same night, who's currently in Montreal, but I was just hanging out with him a couple nights ago. He just did has it been announced that he did? I can't remember if his current thing has been announced yet. I shouldn't say. But wait.
Just to be on the site, but yeah, I know he's directed 2 movies.
Yeah, and he just finished something new, but yeah, he's doing great. But yeah, no, that was the first time I met those guys. It was really a weird experience. I think Evan to this day is kind of better. I don't think he would like this characterization. In fact, I think he'd probably be pissed off at me for saying it, but it's true. He's better at genuine networking, like, than anyone I know, and that he has a genuine, and I mean this in a nice way. Normally when you hear someone's good at networking, it means they're like a shallow person who's full of shit, and doesn't believe in actual work, but puts themselves out there and sells themselves, and that's how they get work. Evan, of course, is the opposite, but he has a genuine curiosity and love for other people's work that I myself don't even. I mean, I watch way more movies than a lot of my friends. I tend to feel like I need to be really up on what's happening in cinema to compete. So I tend to try to watch everything, especially the stuff, avant-garde or foreign or independent films, stuff that feels like it's on the fringes of the vanguard. I particularly feel like I need to be aware of, even if it's terrible, which it often is. Evan is even beyond me, though. He watches everything. He knows everyone. If he sees a film and likes it, he'll just like message the filmmaker, just be like, "Hey man, good job." Right. And he's always done that. And that's because of that,
that's how we got Bill Moseley to be in Homesick. Was he?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how. I think
that's how we convention and said you want to do a movie together, and Bill Moseley gave him his agent's number.
Bill Moseley, who I'm now like friendly with, and we reply to each other's tweets all the time. Like, yeah, he's you think. Boy, I really don't want to encourage people watching this chat to reach out anymore to people online, because that was something obviously I never did in my career. I never messaged Sam Raimi and then tried to get him to read my script or whatever. But at the same time, you'd be surprised at how accessible people are. I mean, Barbara Crampton in Your Next is the perfect example. She loves telling the story where we had this whole strategy of how we were going to basically trick Barbara Crampton into being in our indie movie, out of coming into retirement and doing our indie movie. And we like sent her the script as like the opening salvo of a like 3-tiered process that involved getting Jeffrey Combs and Stuart Gordon to vouch for us, because we knew they were big fans of Horrible Way to Die, our earlier, more kind of indie film that we did with Swanberg and Amy Simons, and also Lane and Brandon Carroll. And then we sent her the script, and we were like, okay, now we need to get Stuart to call her and blah blah blah. And she just was like, okay, I'll do it. And we're like, what? Oh wait, never mind. I guess stop reaching out to Stuart. She just agreed to do it, and it was really like, so you don't know how friendly some of these people are, and how willing they are to do things outside their comfort zone, because they just don't get offered it. And Barbara Crampton being the perfect example. She was retired, but because she'd retired from acting, no one had kind of noticed that her kids had reached an age where she kind of didn't have to be retired anymore. Right. So no one was sending her stuff, except us. And we didn't even like think of, we didn't really think of going out to anyone else. We just had a strategy for why we wanted her. And that worked out obviously really well for us, and in many ways. And we got this great iconic performance, and now she's back doing other films. I mean, she's actually doing like 12 films a year. Last time I counted. Every movie I see, I'm like, Barbara's. Evan is really, really good at just not having, maybe it's a lack of social anxiety. I don't know what it is. For whatever reason, Evan, who himself is a very sensitive, brilliant guy, just doesn't have the thing that I have, where like I see, if I see Sam Raimi or someone on the sidewalk, I'm not going to go up to him and say like, hey man, like, big fan of your work. I'm going to say, oh, that's Sam Raimi. I'm going to keep walking. But Evan will actually be like, hey man, like, I'm a big fan of your work. And you know what? 99.999% of the time, people love fucking hearing that. So Evan, who was doing Homesick up with you guys, I think at that time we were down near Mobile, and I think you guys were up kind of more near Birmingham. That we ended up filming near Birmingham for a bit, in like the abandoned sets of Big Fish. But Evan just basically like found out that there was another horror movie shooting, and I think just wrote, like, in a very Evan way, just basically wrote Fangoria and was like, hey, I'll go do like a set coverage and write an article for you guys on this other thing if you give us like gas money. And Fangoria was like, all right, like, they sent him like $50 or something, maybe. I mean, he probably did it for free, knowing Evan. But like, yeah, so suddenly there was just these two guys on our set, like, from Fangoria, and it was this big, like all those, I don't know if you remember Fangoria that well, but like, every film would try to prop up its big gore effect. You want the Fangoria writers on the day when you're doing a bunch of crazy shit. Well, this was like a pretty sedate ghost story set during the Civil War. And, it was one of my weirder scripts, honestly, that we kind of tried to make a more commercial horror film, and it never really was quite it's not, I personally don't think the film fully succeeded, partially because of my script, and its deficiencies. But because I was trying to do like a The Ring type thing, like I was trying to do something like very subtle without jump scares that would be kind of strange, right? But we had this one gore set piece, which was this woman being eviscerated by an invisible ghost. She herself is a ghost, but you're kind of seeing this memory of this horrible thing that happened, where this plantation owner was using his slaves for human sacrifice. Obviously, only at like that young an age did I think I was like qualified to even be like writing about this kind of stuff. Just the pure arrogance of like a guy in his early 20s, a white male in his early 20s. I was like, I'll make a film about slavery. And so, like Evan and Adam show up, and this, we've got this woman, and she's got this rig, and she's kind of buried in the earth, and this gut thing, her guts are going to be pulled out, and we're going to do it all practically, and creating like a really regular occurrence in my career with Adam Wingard. The effect was a disaster. This big ball of nonsense came out of her. The blood didn't work, and she's like, ah, and there's like this sad little like plastic puppet like hovering above her that just looks terrible. And we'd waited until like 5 a.m. to see this effect, and I was just like, and like Alex Turner, the director of the film, was just like, cut, and then went to go like basically yell at everyone, very politely. Alex is a nice guy, but he just went to go kind of more accurately shake his head sadly at everyone, and I just kind of started laughing, at the monitor back in Video Village, and I was like, oh, let's go for like a walk or something. And then I just ended up chatting with those guys. I mean, I don't think I never. I think I did read Evan's article, and it was pretty good. I don't think like he used any like quotes from me, because I think we just were kind of off the record, and we just ended up chatting about like Hong Kong action movies and movies like Evil Dead Trap, which I think Adam at the time was a big fan of Evil Dead Trap 2, and I think that was a big influence on what he was doing with Homesick.
Mhm.
And then in that Evan kind of way, we all just stayed in touch. I mean,
And that movie was in Homesick too.
yeah, they used like a clip. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, though, yeah, which I mean, their fondness for Evil Dead Trap 2 is really confusing to me. I mean, I'd seen it before I met them, and I was like, yeah, I've seen Evil Dead Trap 2. What's good about that film? And oh, it's like a giallo, like it's like a Japanese giallo with like all these. It's like, maybe I need to watch it again. I mean, I remember Evil Dead Trap 1, which that's not very good either. But anyway, whatever. So yeah, we just stayed in touch. And then when Adam was sending me short films, some of which you were in, and it was really Popsicle that I was like, we were kind of always talking about like, oh, we should collaborate. We should all try to find a way to work together on something because, at the time I was kind of trying to get my directing career going, but I didn't know how to shoot video because I majored in cinematography, but I only shot film. And every time I tried to shoot video, it looked shitty, and I couldn't figure out why. And then Adam's sending me these things that he like did in a weekend that like looked better than like Hollywood films, and I was just like, all right, let's find something for us to do together. And it took a while. I mean, we did What Fun We Were Having, which hasn't really come out because it doesn't feel like the right time yet, kind of, for that movie. But like, we screened it. We screened it at Fantasia, and then we did A Horrible Boy to Die, which I was much more directly involved in. Whereas I wasn't really involved in What Fun We're Having. I just kind of gave Adam a story idea. Like A Horrible Boy to Die, I actually like put together the financing and formed the LLC and got our insurance and got all our locations and we did that in my hometown in Missouri. And that was the one where we were like, where we actually had some success and we sold it for more money. And that was how we were like, oh, okay, let's keep doing this. So it's funny. It's totally bizarre. But I mean, the important thing, I guess, for people to know in that timeline is I met Adam and Evan in the fall of 2003. Yep. And it was probably about 7 years later that A Horrible Boy to Die premiered at Toronto.
Yeah, that's about right.
And we kind of started having some career success. And so it's like, there was a lot of false starts and a lot of like projects that we talked about that didn't get made, that we couldn't. And Horrible Boy to Die ultimately ended up costing about $80,000, but we could not get anyone to give us $80,000 for like 7 years, So, it was a lot of kind of hustling, having a day job and just trying to make it work.
And that was the thing about, I remember about on set of You're Next. Not so much VHS 2 because you were the director of that, but I remember on You're Next just thinking this is the most unenviable job.
Oh, producing that movie?
Yeah, because I just remember up in that attic room.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen me do that since. I mean, look, I was lucky on Your Next in that Jess Wu, who now is Jess Calder, because her and Keith got married.
Yes.
Congratulations. Adam and I were actually the only two witnesses besides our sound. Oh, am I out of focus?
It should come back. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a fancy webcam for this, so just let me know. I'll do the thing.
Right.
Yeah, but otherwise it should look good. Colors should be fine. Yeah, Adam and I were like 2 of 3 witnesses at their wedding, their like legal wedding. They had like a ceremony, but we were the only 2 people at their legal wedding. But like they were very helpful, having Jess there for the entire shoot, and Keith, and obviously our local producer Kim Sherman as well, who we worked with on both A Horrible Boy to Die and the wraparound segment of VHS that we'd shot like a couple weeks earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the real reason I was working that much is just because I had to. I mean, I never set out to produce films because I know it's a thankless job. And furthermore, I just don't think it's necessarily where my talents lie. Genuinely, I think I'm better at other stuff. But, there's just no one else going to be able to get that made in that way. And again, I know kind of Keith and Jess at the time were kind of like, why are we doing this in Columbia, Missouri? Like, and it did feel like a lot of mistakes were being made. And then ultimately, the film was a success. But I mean, it always felt like we were on the precipice of complete failure. making your next. Like, and we didn't have enough money. Everything was a disaster. We didn't have enough time. Like every day we'd get further and further behind until we're adding days at the end of the shoot. Every day, like we were on the verge of getting kicked out of that location, I mean, which would have been a nightmare, so, and it was like,
see, that's something I never knew was because you guys were great at insulating the actors too, because I knew, there's stuff going on, but I don't remember all being.
Yeah, we did our best. I mean, look, you don't want to complain to your actors, especially on a film like that. I mean, you just want your actors to be able to do their job. So you try to insulate them from any drama. I mean, ideally, what I want in my career going forward, directing more, and with the next few films I have set up, I would love to also be insulated from the drama. Because that's the other thing is Adam actually probably doesn't know a lot. Adam only recently, like, we were hanging out and I mentioned something. He's like, oh, I never knew that. And I was like, I never told you that because you were incredibly stressed out about trying to figure out how to direct these scenes. So you didn't need to know that, like, we fucked up this, like, part of the house and, like, had to, like, repair it, like, at the last minute. I think Tom Hammock knew, but even Tom didn't bring it to Adam because, like, it was just, you want your actors and your director to be in the zone. And the shitty thing about producing, and obviously I also wrote Your Next and acted in it. So I was trying to do a lot, although my role is a brief masked one, that largely was literally replaced by a dummy, and that was fine for the rest of the shoot. But like, I mean, it really was just like, we needed Kim, we needed Jess, we needed Keith, and we needed me. We had our co-producer, kind of Brock Williams. We had Chris Harding. That was my first film with Chris Harding. Can't leave him out. He was a lifesaver on that film. Amazing producer in his own right, who's gone on to kind of do stuff on his own while still working with Jess and Keith. And all of us were just like working like 20-hour days, I'm going to say. I mean, it was really intense. And we were shooting 6-day weeks. And I was sleeping on this old futon at my mother's house that fucked up my back. And like, I had all this like joint pain, and like, it was like really that shoot ended. And I was just like, well, like, I think my career's over. And then turned out that was like the beginning of my career. So you just never know with this stuff. But yeah, I mean, I was really miserable on the set of Your Next. I mean, like people make jokes about that, but then I've made now more movies that are more comfortable, where I have things like a trailer to go to. Usually I share it with Adam, but I have a trailer to go to and things like that. And if I want like a snack on set, I can get the snack. That's really nice.
Yeah.
But like, I'm still miserable every time I'm making a movie. And I've come to believe that you don't have to be as miserable as we were on Your Next, because we were really doing a Hail Mary. I mean, originally the budget of that film was $550,000. Ultimately, it cost about $700,000, and then Lionsgate did some reshoots at kind of our begging. They helped us get some additional shots to the beginning, and ultimately, probably that movie cost about $1 million. But when we were making this ambitious movie with like 15 kill scenes for like $550,000, and it was just such a ambitious thing that of course we were going to suffer. But now I see like some independent filmmaker pals, and they hang out on set and they're having like great times and taking selfies with the actors, and they're like, we wrapped early to like barbecue. And I'm just like, maybe you should have gotten another shot. Like, maybe you should have got more coverage, because I now think that you should be miserable when you're on set. You shouldn't let the actors see it, because then they'll lose confidence in you shouldn't let your cast or crew see it, because then they'll lose confidence in what they're doing. But at the same time, I think Adam said once that, like, the thing about filmmaking is you want it to be as good as it can possibly be, and it's never as good as it could possibly be by like the definition of that term. So you're always just kind of like, I mean, there was one time like Adam like looked over and I was standing at the monitor just like glaring. He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing. I'm just unhappy." He was like, "Oh, don't do that, man. I thought you saw something. I thought there was like a continuity error or something. Don't do that." And I was like, sorry. But it's true. It's like, we're never really happy on set. If we're happy, it's just because we're laughing at how unhappy we are. I mean, Blair Witch, was our first studio movie made with all the luxury of a studio production. And of course we managed to shoot it out in the woods in the exact wrong part of North America for what we wanted, in an area that it turns out has like a plane going overhead every 5 seconds. And so we were miserable the whole time. And
it's always lovely for a movie that takes place in the woods entirely.
Well, I mean, we knew that was going to be a miserable shoot. I mean, it just was one of those things where, like, you're out in the woods at night, and of course it's going to rain and everything else. And yeah. Anyway, but I mean, but when I say Blair Witch was like a tough shoot, it was nothing compared to Your Next. I mean, Your Next was a tough shoot. I mean, even the actors holding in Your Next was like infested with wasps. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
I don't know if you were ever in actors holding, is the thing. I think you kind of were either always just hanging out or just too busy, but we had an actors holding room, which you contractually have to do for SAG regulations. And at one point,
the third floor? The third?
Yeah, it was, I'm trying to picture in my mind. It was the third floor all the way at like the end.
Oh yeah.
And at a certain point, like, it just became infested with wasps. And like I think Nick Tucci or someone that came up, he's like, I'm not complaining or anything, but you should know, like, there's like a few hundred wasps in there. And I'm like, oh shit. And then I think, I don't know, someone went in there and just killed all the wasps with like a broom. It wasn't me. I was just like, well, that room's ruined.
That sounds like Chris, I think, would be brave enough to do that. Chris Harding.
It might have been Chris. It might. I really can't remember. Anyway,
if I saw Chris Harding come and I was a wasp, I would run away.
It feels like one of those things, but I'm not sure it was Chris. It does feel like Chris would kill all the wasps, but I'm not sure. Anyway, doesn't matter.
I was going to ask you about a couple other things, particularly because I think we would be remiss not to mention VHS 2 a little bit, because you directed me in it, and there were a lot of interesting things on that. And so how did VHS, now this is my memory of VHS. I remember getting sent an email by you, I think, and you said, well, you can't tell anybody, but we're about to do a sequel to VHS. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that had come out yet. And it was a real secret, that nobody could talk about, that there was an actual movie. So I didn't tell even people what I was going to film. I just went to Culver City and filmed VHS 2.
Well, I mean, Adam and I are always really secretive about our projects. We always have been. It's just no one noticed at first because no one knew. But like Blair Witch was a funny thing because we were really secretive about that for years. Ultimately, maybe to the film's detriment, in that like we never had, we were in such a bubble for so long that we kind of lost perspective on certain creative choices. But yeah, with VHS 2, so the first VHS to this day might be the most profitable film I've been involved in. Certainly instantly profitable, in that it cost, I believe the total costs of VHS 1 were about $243,000, and it instantly sold at Sundance for $1.8 million. And so we didn't get a huge share of that. Like we had a little bit of it, but it was like, we didn't own that movie. But the financier, which was a company called The Collective, which at the time was managing Bloody Disgusting, and they were Brad Miska's managers. They were just basically like, after Sundance, they were like, by the way, like, we didn't know what you guys were doing with this movie, and we didn't really know that this was even going to be a movie, but you just got a Sundance premiere and it sold for like 6 times what it cost. So if you have any interest in doing another, we are amenable to that, and we are willing to spend slightly more. That shoot, I'm not really happy with the wraparound for VHS 2 because we kind of just had such difficulty with so many of those special effects, and a lot of that was kind of my own naivete, just hoping things were going to go well. And our special effects guy on that shoot didn't show up when he was supposed to, and that was like, well, what do you do when you have like a 4-day shoot? That's the kind of the problem. If I were to do something like that again, which I might do something kind of similar to that again, like it'll be much more of a I'll vet things a lot more closely. I won't kind of just like trust that things are going to work out. Obviously, I'm very happy with your work on the film, but like, and remember you the latex burned your face and you were so unhappy.
I do. Yeah, I did. I was so little unhappy, but
yeah. That was. I mean, you were really. I mean, you had like burns on your face for that entire shoot. Yeah, every shoot is miserable. People think like people have fun making movies. I really question that. I don't know how that happens, and I don't know if they're doing it right or what. Anyway,
it is. intrinsically nerve-wracking experience. I mean, even as an actor, there's a sense of anxiety, not as much as if you were a producer, but
it depends. I think once you get more experience, everything gets a little less daunting because you at least know what's happening and why. At least at this point, I've made enough films that when I go on a set, I know like what everyone is doing and how to talk to them and so on. And, I have a body of work now that people also like aren't just like, who's this fucking guy? And people are kind of nicer to me, which helps. At any rate, and VHS 2 was really like, because the first film was so unexpectedly successful, we did not think the first VHS was going to get into Sundance. And we certainly didn't think it was going to be like one of the biggest sales. We were just like, it was originally conceived as the Bloody Disgusting movie. It was originally actually conceived as like a kind of web series. And then Brad and I kind of talked about like the idea of doing it more as an old school anthology with like a wraparound. We shot the wraparound before anything else. So you can tell we shot it not knowing how many segments it was going to have. We just filmed a bunch of scenes of guys putting tapes in VCRs and just really, we'll figure this out in editing. It was such a like almost improvised film. At the time that Adam and I signed on to it, I think the only other filmmakers attached was J.T. Petty. J.T. Petty and maybe John Schnepp, who just passed away. And JT didn't end up making his segment, and John, I think, did shoot something, but it didn't work out. And like, I think he ended up getting the rights to it back, but it just wasn't. It was too, I think, overtly comedic for what the brand was going for. So that was an interesting kind of thing, because we thought we were working with like these two people, and they ended up being the only two people that didn't work on the film. JT couldn't do it just because it was a non-union thing. It was all the collective insisted on it all being non-WGA, non-DGA, non-SAG, because all those things would kind of cut into their profit percentage, and it's hard to make a $240,000 anthology film by DGA guidelines, which won't let you share credits and so on. So basically, they were kind of like, if you're willing to do this again, kind of in this exact same way, you are like a greenlit project. And ultimately VHS 2 cost like about $350,000. It was more expensive, but it still was really cheap, and it sold, I think, for slightly less. So then but it was really like Adam and I, because when we shot that wraparound, and we shot that wraparound way before anyone else filmed anything else. I think David Bruckner was the next person to shoot a segment, who I hadn't even met David at the time. And it wasn't kind of until we saw David's segment that we were like, oh, like this is going to be like a real thing. Well, maybe we should have done a better job. And kind of by the time the film was finished, we were kind of like, damn, like Radio Silence and David Bruckner and all these guys did like better work than us. Like, we want to do this again and do more, do it like bigger, do it funnier. And no one wanted to do the wraparound. And I was kind of like, you know what? I have a mythology. I'll do the wraparound. I'll try to make it much more static. I had some ideas that worked out. I had some ideas that didn't. It's kind of trial and error. Some of that was, again, our special effects guy not showing up, which really did limit some of what I had planned. And again, when you have a 30-day shoot and a day goes badly, you have contingency days. You can add a day. But when you have a 4-day shoot and a day goes badly or 2 days go badly, you just kind of have to come up with a new film on the spot, which is what we did.
There was some reshoots on that too, because I remember this scene where I shoot my face off had to be reshot because there was a depth perception gag with the makeup. So the first time I shot it, I was holding my head the way you would naturally hold the head, and it appeared that my face had turned into a horse.
That's right.
And then I had to do it again where I held my head back so that the illusion was created that the jaw was missing.
That's right. And then funnily enough, that segment and some of Gareth and Timo's segment that they shot in Indonesia, Gareth Evans and Timo Janto, they got us an NC-17, which we had no idea that we were contractually obligated by the deal that the collective had signed with Magnolia to deliver an R-rated film.
Wow.
First VHS was an R-rated film. No problem. I mean, it had certainly some scandalous and gory moments, but but VHS 2 got an NC-17, and we were like, oh, like fuck. So not only did we have to reshoot you blowing off your lower jaw, I had to then go find a special effects guy and pay him. I think we ultimately paid him about $1,000 to just create because we couldn't cut the movie because that would require a new sound mix, and the collective weren't going to pay for that. So my like no budget solution was like, let's not do anything to the sound, but we'll just do a digital glitch. Like the videos, like the tracking is messing up over these gory moments. Like when the guys in Jakarta, the MPA has a lot of problems with people shooting themselves in the head, is what we found out.
Okay.
People committing suicide on camera. Like you can shoot someone in the head in a movie, get an R rating, but if someone shoots themselves in the head, that's an NC-17. Which, I mean, I get it. They don't want kids to imitate that. I get it. I mean, kids probably shouldn't.
People getting shot in the head in that movie too. So
lots of people got shot in the head in VHS 2. It was like a movie full of people getting shot in the head. So the scene in like Jakarta where all the people in the circle like all shoot themselves, I just had him just do like a little jerk on the image for that 1 second, then it cuts as they're all like falling to the ground, and the MPAA, to their credit, were totally cool with that. I kind of was like, fuck, if they don't buy this.
And it is, I mean, it's pretty amazing that the actual idea is that they have, the objection that they have is the sight of the blood coming out. So the idea that a man is standing there with a gun to his head and that he pulls the trigger isn't so much the problem, because you can just do a glitch over that and get away with it. The problem is that you actually will see.
Yeah, you're seeing the effects of the shot. It was complicated. Yeah, it was ultimately we had 4 shots in VHS 2 that got us an NC-17 rating. One was you shooting yourself in the head. They didn't mind you coming up afterwards, thank God. I don't know what we would have done with that.
We would have been.
It was just that moment in the blood spray and you falling back out of frame. They were like, absolutely not. And then that was one. And then there were three shots in the Indonesian segment, the Indonesian cult segment. One was the person getting with the shotgun under their head, getting their face blown off. One was the guys in the circle. And then I think the other one was like someone getting their throat cut or something. And again, I just reached out to Gareth and Timo, and I was like, look, guys, like, I'm not going to fuck with your shit. We have an NC-17. Here's what I'm proposing. I'm just going to slightly distort the image as if the VCR is having an issue. Which actually, the ironic thing is, if you were like a fan of like certain like horror movies back in the day, and you would rent, say, like Reanimator from like your local video store, and you come to the scene where like Barbara Crampton takes her bra off or whatever, the video would often glitch because someone had like watched it like 500 times in a row or something. So like it was kind of like, I thought, like a funny solution to like have like the most explicit moments of VHS 2, which was not didn't have as much like nudity as the first film. Although I did put some nudity in my segment because I can't resist like a snarky joke. But like it wasn't a very scandalous film compared to like the first movie in terms of like sexual content, but it was absurdly gory, especially thanks to our buddies Gareth and Timo. And so I kind of like the idea that like the most shocking moments of the film, it's almost like the VCR can't handle it, or like some weirdo has watched it like 1,000 times and like fucked the tape up and like damaged the analog signal. And so but yeah, I mean that sucked.
Yeah. But that would make sense because I mean, theoretically, from the mythology, I would have been the weirdo, and that's probably what I would have watched over and over.
Well, yeah, in the mythology, exactly. In the mythology of these tape collectors who are trying to like do some kind of weird, almost satanic alchemy from viewing these tapes, which is, what I was building to with the first 2 films, obviously. It would have made sense that like the most shocking, violent moments would have been like the most dubbed over and the most traded and stuff. So it made sense from a mythology perspective. Now, mind you, has anyone ever seen the R-rated version of VHS 2? I have no idea, because ultimately, I think the only reason we needed it was that it could be a disc option to sell at Walmart. Like Walmart would not sell the Blu-ray or DVD if there wasn't an R-rated cut. But I think what Magnolia did very cleverly is they were just like, they just put both the discs in there, and then and And I don't think there was ever like, I don't think you could ever get just like a pure R-rated version of VHS2. It was just the R-rated disc was an option. And that was
I never saw the R-rated version. I don't think.
I mean, I had to because I QC'd it, like I did the color grading on it and stuff. But like, other than that, I might be the only person who's seen it, because if you get VHS2, who's going to watch the R-rated version? Especially because like it's not like we're the unrated version of like Bridesmaids or whatever, where it's just like, oh, here's a bunch of like improv that we cut out of the movie for a good reason. This actually was like a situation where like the unrated version was the director's preferred version, and the R-rated version was a version that we absolutely just made some cuts to get an R rating, but it was all just to sell discs at Walmart. That was literally and Redbox. Actually, if you rented the film at Redbox, you probably saw the R-rated version, because those two companies do not like R-rated versions, and now physical media is irrelevant. So,
right, yeah,
I still buy Blu-rays.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to watch VHS2 unrated. There's just no, what's the matter with you?
Well, I literally don't think. I mean, I think if you watch VHS2 on Netflix, Shudder, iTunes, what all the various streaming services has been on, it's always been the unrated cut.
Yeah.
We made sure of that. I mean, we were like, one of my big questions. The good news is I have a good relationship with Magnolia from having done both VHS and ABCs of Death, which they released. So I was actually, once the collective kind of told me, like, by the way, you have to deliver an R-rated film, I was able to reach out directly to Magnolia's like people and just be like, what exactly are we talking about here? And they were like, oh, like it's just for selling discs at these like two retailers. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so no one is going to see these cuts. And they're kind of like, yeah, but we have to deliver it because, you're talking like, if you don't get your DVD into Walmart or your Blu-ray into Walmart, that's, that could be thousands of sales. Probably. I mean, even for a film like VHS2, which did really well on video, obviously, like not being in Walmart could really cost you, especially when you're a film that small, that was bought for a fairly small sum. That you're talking small numbers, they make a difference. So that was a totally bizarre aspect of making that movie that I never would have anticipated. Was just that weird. Just that weird. I think I tried to talk about this on the commentary track, but Adam and I were like too drunk or too hungover, depending on which one we used, and then everyone got mad at us for not taking our commentary track seriously. And even though we provided a bunch of good information, and then that greatly anticipated the Blair Witch Blu-ray commentary controversy of January of 2017, when everyone got really mad at us for not taking our commentary track seriously. Oh. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to continue to not take my commentary track seriously. Yeah. And until there's,
I was not aware of that one. The Blair Witch.
Oh, this is a very minor thing. I mean, this just points to kind of more like kind of a thing in our culture right now, which is people want to be outraged kind of by anything they can. And I think especially because, Donald Trump is president, and I think a lot of people feel kind of powerless, where they kind of are turning on each other a lot. Not that I'm saying that like, I'm opposed to the Me Too movement or the Time's Up movement, because I'm absolutely not. I'm actually like, let's get rid of all those dudes for sure. Yeah. Like that's only going to make the world a better place. And whatever cultural growing pains we have to go to get to that place, is ultimately going to be positive. I've obviously sexually harassed you a little bit, but that's just part of getting you in character and directing. That's an artistic thing.
Exactly.
But other than that, I don't sexually harass anyone.
I always insist that you do full frontal nudity, and I can't be blamed for that.
Well, by the way, I don't know if I would do that. I do know. I definitely wouldn't do that now. And it was just more that like on VHS, we got so much criticism from exclusively male critics, though I have talked to some women who also were made uncomfortable by VHS, and I do take that really seriously. They basically, the criticism of that film was that we kind of portrayed some sexual violence in VHS 1, but didn't really have anything to say about it. It wasn't that we didn't take it seriously, but it was like, it felt exploitive.
I see.
And a lot of people, the main thing I got was like male film critics saying like, VHS is good, too bad so much of it is like rapey. It's like, well, oh, okay. I don't really know what to do with that criticism. Particularly, they were mad at David Bruckner's segment, which to me is borderline just like not even understanding what he was getting at, because clearly his whole segment is commenting on the male gaze and subverting that in a brilliant way. But whatever, people weren't going to give us the benefit of the doubt because we're making a small horror movie that in other ways was really just a B horror movie, and I totally get that. But I did want to find some way to kind of address that so many people had an issue, almost to at times what felt like a puritanical extent, with the female nudity in VHS. And the only thing I could come up with, but Adam and I, by the way, are both naked in the first VHS. You just can only see us each for a split second. That's a random bit of trivia.
And I noticed where Adam is naked too, because when I saw on the set of Your Next, he showed me the segment.
Adam's VHS nude scene, which he was so miserable. It was so cold. But yeah, I mean, it's just a little glimpse of him, but like we kind of were at this phase of our careers where we weren't worried so much about whether we were exploiting other people because we were exploiting ourselves so much. And that's not an excuse, of course, because it's very different, being willing to do things for your own film versus someone you're hired. But none of the actresses in VHS, I mean, everyone was paid fairly. Everyone had a nice time. We don't actually harass people, etc. Everyone felt fine about it. So it kind of didn't occur to us how those scenes, you kind of lose perspective. You see just like an actress who's a friend of yours doing a shot that like everyone cracked up, before we could even say cut.
Oh yeah.
And then other people see like a character being assaulted or whatever, and feel like you're making like a joke of assault. Whatever. This is a very minor controversy that's just bringing me around to another minor controversy. But I thought it would be a funny thing in VHS to do like really explicit kind of traditional horror movie nudity with Mindy Robinson, who fortunately was very much down for the joke, who's does a lot of like nude modeling and then just like show myself naked and just be like, look, to be clear, like if you think you're gonna get that, like you're gonna get this, and also like we are, just to be kind of clear that like, hey, I wouldn't ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing to do. Now, I feel like that again kind of came from a place of ignorance, which is again, it's my movie, so of course I can make a joke of it. But it was just trying to be kind of funny, and so I probably wouldn't do that now. Is the long and short of it. And so largely, I feel like these cultural shifts that are leading to a lot of internet outrage are very good. The problem is people so want to be outraged and so want to be morally righteous, and the easiest way to say I am good is to point at someone else and say like, because you are bad.
Right.
That Adam and I found ourselves the victims, and I use that word facetiously because it was pretty funny actually. But like we found ourselves suddenly getting all these outraged comments about how much we hate our fans and how like disrespectful we are to our fans. And it was just from this one Dread Central article that like came out before the Blair Witch DVD, where the guy who wrote it, Uncle Creepy, Steve, who I've actually met a few times and I didn't realize was a humorless individual. Like basically listen to our commentary and it's like, this is really disappointing. These guys are super angry. It's like he wrote, it's a slap in the face of their fans, which I had so many people quote that to us, like so many people tweeting at us, like, why do you hate your fans? This is a slap in the face of people who watched your film. And it's because we made this joke basically that we were like, well, we were going to explain everything about the Blair Witch mythology, but because you didn't see our movie, we recorded this like a week after the film flopped. We're not going to explain anything, which was of course a joke. It's like the whole point of Blair Witch is that you don't explain everything and that you leave some mystery. And we left plenty of clues and we explained a ton on the commentary, but people just latched onto that one joke, mainly led by Dread Central, this one review. And for like about a month or two, like it was a really kind of weird thing where just like I'd get a couple dozen messages a day, or people posting on my messages like, why do you hate your fans? Why are you such an asshole? I used to really respect you guys. And half the time I'd be like, have you listened to the commentary? And they'd be like, well, no, I'm not going to buy the disc. Like, I hear you're an asshole. It's like, oh. It's like, make up. I know everyone wants to be as outraged about everything at all times. I know it behooves your self-image to assume that anyone who's making films to any degree of success is an asshole and a terrible person. But just make up your own mind a little bit, like, because then the funny thing is, now whenever anyone mentions the Blair Witch commentary to me, they're like, that was hilarious.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it was hilarious, but like, I mean, like Lionsgate were like upset about it. They were, I mean, they didn't say anything really, but they were kind of like, you could tell they were like, we didn't know if people were gonna get this joke, and they definitely didn't. And now these guys seem like jerks, and like that's not gonna help this film on video, and like all this other stuff. So I mean, that movie had a lot of strikes against it from the very start, but that sure didn't help. So yeah, it's a funny thing. I think I personally have a very dry sense of humor. And I know a lot of people can't tell when I'm joking unless I make it fairly obvious and stuff. And largely that's the kind of sense of humor that I enjoy in films and other work. And one medium where it really doesn't translate, I'm finding out, is Blu-ray commentary and DVD commentary. People really don't get sarcasm in those mediums, but I don't care. I don't get paid to do those. They don't make the disc cost more. I do them because I, as a fan, like them, and I'm going to keep doing them the way I want. The only thing that makes me mad is when my stuff gets censored, which Anchor Bay did to me on A Horrible Way to Die, where I made I was making some joke about misogyny, and they cut it out, but they kept the ending, so I sound like I'm being really creepy about Amy Simons. Whereas in fact, I was like referencing someone else who like messaged us to like try to get like nude scenes. But they cut that out because I guess they thought maybe it was like slanderous or libelous, whichever one is spoken and not in print. I forget which. I think slander.
I think that's
yeah. And at any rate, that's what I don't like. Just like don't cut my bad jokes. Let them play out. Anyway, very minor controversy, completely forgotten. I mean, that's the thing. It's like for like a month, Adam and I were like, oh, Jesus, what is going on? And then like, a week later, we were completely forgotten in another cycle of Hollywood outrage. And it was a very small scale cycle. I mean, but it was still annoying.
Yeah. And you do get that sometimes, just this really random comments that are taken into strange areas. But I think it's safe to say that I know Simon and I know Adam, and they don't hate their fans.
No, I mean, look, we both come from like very kind of humble working class backgrounds. We started out, we don't have connections to the film industry like in our families or anything. We started out just as fans. Like I totally know what it's like to want to get your film made but not know how to do it and stuff. I spent like a decade, doing that, so I try to be super respectful and polite, but man, Blair Witch was really annoying. Yeah, I mean, if I thought like the 2 or 3 people that are like, you guys are assholes, like after listening to the VHS 2 commentary, like you guys didn't take this seriously, like you guys just think you're jerks, like, who do you guys think you are? Like Andrew Dice Clay, shut up. Blair Witch was a whole new level of people, feeling empowered to say rude things to me on the internet. But I'm not a woman, so I don't get death threats. And that's, what can you do? I mean, if it gets too annoying, I'll do what Adam did and just delete.
Yes. So unfortunately, you have to do that sometimes. And that's,
I mean, so VHS is the VHS movies were one level of people being like dubious about our ethics or whatever and criticizing us. And I think, again, because Adam and I are both kind of working class filmmakers and we do put ourselves out there a bit more, we're not like Max Landis or whatever. Like, I think people feel more like they have an access to us. And we were on Twitter before we were successful. We were on Twitter, when for a couple of years we had like 100 followers, and all of whom we knew personally. So, if you've grown up with us on social media, you feel like you can talk to us a little more like you actually know us. People feel like, oh, I see Simon and Adam joking around with each other like this. I'll make a joke like this and I'll call Simon an asshole. And I'm like, that's really rude, man. You hurt my feelings and ruined my day. And, it's a complicated thing to navigate. But because we do put ourselves out there, we did receive a level of kind of animosity for the VHS movies that then Blair Witch was one thing, but then what Adam got for Death Note, that was a real level of like thousands of people a day, just like making his Twitter unusable. So like for that, I was like, all right, yeah, buddy, he's like, I think I'm going to delete my Twitter. I was like, I think that's a great idea.
I mean, that freaked me out, and I had nothing to do with Death Note.
Oh yeah, I mean, I posted that I liked the movie and got like 200 outrage statements. Ultimately, it was a fake controversy. Ultimately, people have really, I think like right-wing people were really kind of have figured out a way people have always been mad about live action anime adaptations because they believe that they themselves or the voice actor or whatever should play the main character. They're always mad at casting these kind of, nerd fan properties. And I say this as a huge fan of most anime myself. I mostly watch anime as opposed to American television because I just think the storytelling tends to be more interesting. But like, so I mean, I think like knowing that Adam was going to change a lot again, because that's our creative perspective, I think that both of us share to doing adaptations. I knew he was going to take a lot of heat. I knew people weren't going to appreciate that. Like he was doing a Death Note that was kind of like can exist in complement to this other Death Note, to these other Death Note adaptations. If you want a more faithful remake, good news. There's been 3 live action films in Japan. 4, actually. There have been 4 live action films if you count L Change the World and the more recent Death Note sequel. So there have been 4 live action films in Japan that follow the original manga pretty closely. So Adam was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something different. And I knew he knew that was going to get that was going to make a lot of people angry because a lot of people really obsess over that material and have an ego attachment to it. But it really was just a situation where like, I think a lot of people found out that they could phrase that criticism in a way by addressing kind of it as a whitewashing issue which is, obviously like a problem, not just in Hollywood historically, but currently.
Sure.
But by addressing it in those political terms, it forced everyone to take it seriously, and it became a big pile on, really led by I think a fairly small amount of people, almost in kind of a Gamergate model, but it, and all of which is fine. It didn't hurt the film. The film did great for Netflix. All the people who were mad about it watched it anyway. Probably a third of them liked it, and most people who don't really know the Death Note materials just enjoyed it as a new weird film with a great kind of mythology to it. And so it ended up being successful in the real world, which is ultimately what matters for a film's financial and critical legacy. But on the social media, it was quite controversial, which was quite annoying because, of course, Adam can't just say what I just said. He's not objective. I can only say what I just said because I have nothing to do with Death Note other than I got to see like a rough cut of it, and like, it's not like I even gave notes on it. I just like got to see it before other people did. It was something I just wasn't involved in at all. So I can say, you're all wrong. You're all idiots. It's a good movie. But Adam can't say that. So I think Adam just was ultimately like, this is stupid. And also, by the way, Twitter is stupid. It's a horrible website. None of us should be on it.
I must admit, I hardly do anything on Twitter.
I didn't know you were on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter, but you wouldn't know it because I never do anything. I look at Twitter and I go, what am I supposed to say?
Yeah, look, the funny thing about Twitter is, of course, the whole joke of Twitter at first is that here's this truncated format that literally prevents you from being able to say anything nuanced or intelligent. So let's all just use it for dumb jokes and point out that this is like, it's kind of funny that this is like the next step in us becoming stupider and more shallow and more, attention deficit as a culture. Like take Neil Postman's amusing ourselves to death, multiply all his warnings by 1 million, and it results in Twitter. So for the first years of Twitter, we all just used it to make basically like dog puns. Now Twitter is, of course, the location where all serious political and journalistic discourse takes place, and it's driven us all collectively completely insane. And we have absolutely become stupider, meaner, less happy people by using it. At the same time, I use it because what else am I going to do? I spend all my day in front of a computer. I need a distraction. I need to waste 80% of my time clicking refresh. And Facebook's even worse, buddy. Yeah. I hope eventually I have the self-discipline to delete all my social media accounts before I make like a dumb joke that destroys my career. But we'll see.
The way things go, it could be anytime. I mean, you don't know what's going to be considered a dumb joke, Well,
fortunately, my sense of humor tends to lean towards either things that are so sarcastic that no one can tell if I'm kidding or not, including myself, or jokes that are just so overtly stupid on like a Marmaduke Garfield level that like, I don't tend to go for like the kind of shocking, Tromask humor that got James Gunn in trouble. I tend to, think like dogs falling, into like their food dish is pretty funny. So I tend to be pretty safe, I guess. I'll delete eventually.
It's interesting you said the James Gunn thing, because I could go into that and we could probably talk for hours. But
we could have our own talk show, buddy. But I guess we should probably wrap it up because I do need to do some work today.
We're gonna have to do this again sometime. That would be a lot of fun because we could go on, you know.
Well, look, it's cool to chat with you. I haven't, you know, we live far away. I don't get to hang out with my friends anymore because actually, it's funny. I was just talking to Keith and Jess about this because like we went to go see like some basketball game, and it's like the first time I'd seen them in months, and it was like they were like, "We need to make another movie together because otherwise we don't see you." And it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of true. It's like that's I don't have time to hang out with like even some of my closest friends, so it's nice. So anyway, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It was a great chat. Thanks for coming on. And I want to thank all you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks so much.